Chapter 19 The Ogopogo A little red rowboat lay on the shore, its oars spread out on either side. Hugo thought that they looked like arms open wide. "Meet the Voyager," said Boone, sweeping his arm toward the boat. On the back of the rowboat the word Voyager was painted in white letters. "She's all mine, too." Hugo almost said Voyager spelled wrong, but decided not to. Together they pushed the Voyager into the river. Boone held the boat while Hugo stepped into it. Boone hopped in himself, and he pushed off with an oar. At first Boone did the rowing, but then Hugo asked if he could try. "Sure," said Boone, and he handed Hugo the oars. It was harder than it looked. At first Hugo could only make the Voyager turn in circles. After a few minutes, though, Hugo got the hang of it. With his strong arms he rowed the Voyager along the river so fast that Boone flapped his arms in the air and laughed. "Go, Hugo, go! We're flying!" he called out. It did feel like they were flying. The hair on Hugo's body whipped wildly in the wind. It was thrilling to be out on the water under a darkening sky. It felt like anything could happen. "There it is, Hugo, up ahead! The Ogopogo!" cried Boone. Hugo stared into the distance. There was something. It looked sort of like a log, though. In a deep voice Boone said, "Bigfoot and Littlefoot raced across the water in the Voyager. They're triple turbo speedboat." "What are you doing?" asked Hugo. "Telling our story," said Boone in his regular voice. "Why?" "Because one day I'm going to write books about my adventures as a cryptozoologist," he answered. The dark shape in the distance disappeared for a moment. "The Ogopogo slithered through the water," said Boone in his deep voice, "while Bigfoot and Littlefoot bravely chased it." The dark shape reappeared now, a little farther away. "Suddenly a storm came," said Boone in his deep voice. "There isn't any storm," protested Hugo. "I know," Boone said in his regular voice, "but it adds suspense." "Oh," said Hugo. "The Voyager was pitching and rolling," Boone continued in his deep voice. "The waves were as tall as a roller coaster." "And there were sharks," Hugo suggested, who wasn't exactly sure what a roller coaster was. "You could put that in." "And there were loads of sharks," said Boone. "Luckily, Bigfoot was an expert sailor." Hugo rowed faster, his face warm with pride. "And he sailed right through the storm like a pro," Boone continued in his deep voice. "No one had ever seen the Ogopogo up close. Some said it lived in an underwater cave on a secret island." Suddenly, up ahead, they saw a snaky hump scroll out of the water. Right after that, a head popped out of the water. It looked like a horse's head with a too long neck. The creature twisted its neck around and looked back at them. Hugo could see the gleam of one dark eye. Then the creature dove back under water and vanished. For a moment, Hugo and Boone were perfectly silent. "Whoa," Hugo whispered. "Whoa," Boone whispered back. "It looked right at us," said Hugo. They both stared out at the water. It was flat and still now. The Ogopogo was gone. In his deep voice, Boone said, "The world is full of mysteries if you just pay attention," said Littlefoot. The sky was getting darker now. In all the excitement, Hugo had forgotten about the Frog Moon Festival. "It's getting late. I should go back home," Hugo said. They weren't far from the 5 hemlocks, so Hugo began to row again. "Steer clear of the rocks to your left," said Boone. Hugo steered away from them. "The river gets shallow in a minute, so bring up your oars," Boone warned. Hugo did. Then Boone told him, "The river splits up ahead. You'll want to stay to the right." It turned out that Boone knew all about the big wide world, or at least all about Ripple Worm River. He was an excellent navigator, and Hugo was becoming a good sailor. The only thing they needed was 5 barrels of blackberries and 30 jars of acorn butter. Chapter 20 Monsters. In no time at all they arrived at the banks of the meadow where Hugo had first set off on his journey to find Boone. Hugo and Boone dragged the boat onto the shore. "Thank you for everything," Hugo said as he stepped out of the water. "I'll write to you tomorrow." "Wait," said Boone, confused. I wanted to meet the other Sasquatches. Oh, well, said Hugo uneasily. That might not be a good idea. Why? Boone's eyes grew wide. Would they eat me? Of course not, said Hugo. Then why not? Because the other Sasquatches will be mad at me, thought Hugo. Because they will say Boone is dangerous. Because if I bring Boone back to meet them, no one will want to talk to me ever again. But Boone had saved Hugo's life. He and Boone had chased the Ogopogo together. They were Bigfoot and Littlefoot. Hugo looked at Boone. Are you hungry? He asked. Always, said Boone. Well, you're about to have the best gooseberry pie in the whole North Woods. Come on. Hugo and Boone hurried across the meadow, then up the hill and through the woods toward the 5 hemlocks. They could hear the sounds of the Frog Moon Festival, laughing and stomping and singing. That made them walk even faster. Suddenly, a high-pitched screech rang out through the woods. Ooma! Ooma! Hugo and Boone stopped short. What was that? Asked Boone. I don't know, said Hugo. He had never heard anything that sounded like that, not a bird or a bobcat or a wolf. Ooma! The shrieking seemed to be coming from high in the treetops. Hugo and Boone stared up at the hemlock trees. The light was so dim that at first they couldn't see anything. But then Boone pointed up the hemlock tree farthest from them. In a whisper he said, There. Hugo saw it, half covered by leaves. Its gaping mouth showed 2 rows of pointed teeth. Its eyes were mean yellow slits, and there was a large spike on its head. What is that thing? Asked Boone in a horrified voice. Hugo knew exactly what it was. He felt his heart begin to beat fast. Is it some kind of bird? Whispered Boone. It's not a bird, Hugo whispered. It's a snoot-nosed gint. Ooma! The snoot-nosed gint shrieked. The hemlock tree branches rustled widely. Hugo could see the snoot-nosed gint's eyes staring down at him. Thinking fast, he grabbed a yellow umbrella from Boone's hands. Run, he told Boone. What about you? Asked Boone. I'll be right behind you, Hugo told him. Boone ran. Hugo turned back to the snoot-nosed gint. He lifted the umbrella in one hand and pointed the tip toward the creature. With one quick step forward and a heave-ho, Hugo launched the umbrella into the air. It flew up into the tree, and a second later the snoot-nosed gint shrieked in pain. Henry turned and ran as fast as a sneeze through a screen door.